The Grakdel invasion fleet hovered above Earth like a sea of black daggers against the stars, their angular ships pointed downward in perfect formation. General Muth, the supreme commander of the fleet, watched his view screen with 6 cold eyes brimming with satisfaction. The humans had put up a decent fight, but now, after 3 weeks of calculated warfare, victory was at hand. Muth had studied Earth's militaries for years. He had analyzed their tactics, understood their weapons, and predicted their every move. What he hadn't counted on was Sarah Miller. Sarah stood in the dark basement of what used to be Denver's Science Museum, staring at her cobbled-together communication device. Sweat beaded on her forehead, despite the chill in the air. She wasn't a soldier or a scientist, just a high school physics teacher who refused to give up. Around her, a small group of survivors watched anxiously as she made the final adjustments. "Are you sure this will work?" asked Damon, a former bus driver whose hands hadn't stopped shaking since the invasion began. Sarah bit her lower lip. "Honestly, no idea. But what do we have to lose at this point?" On the Grakdel command ship, General Muth received a report from his intelligence officer, Trues. "The human resistance is nearly broken, sir. Our algorithms predict total surrender within 26 hours. Trues said, his pointed ears twitching with pride. Muth nodded. The Grakdel had conquered 17 worlds before Earth, always using the same methodical approach. First, disable communications and power grids. Second, destroy military bases. Third, block food and water supplies until the population broke. It was efficient, logical, and had never failed. Sir, Trues continued, "There's something unusual happening in the human settlement designated Denver." Muth dismissed the concern with a flick of his clawed hand. "Probably another desperate last stand. Send the usual containment squad." Back in the museum basement, Sarah connected the final wire to her device. It was an ugly contraption, part radio, part microwave, part cell phone tower components, all bound together with duct tape and hope. "Here goes nothing," she whispered. She flipped the switch, and the machine hummed to life. Nothing seemed to happen at first, but then their few working electronic devices began to act strangely. Flashlights flickered, a radio sputtered static, and someone's watch beeped wildly. Sarah checked her calculations again. "It's working. The signal's broadcasting." "What exactly does this thing do?" asked Mina, a 12-year-old girl who had been helping Sarah collect parts. Sarah managed a tired smile. "It sends out a specific electromagnetic pulse that should disrupt their ship's navigation systems, and if I got the frequency right, it might just mess with their tech enough." The ground suddenly shook with a distant explosion. Everyone froze. Above the city, a Grakdel scout ship spun wildly out of control, its engines firing in random bursts. The ship careened into another, smaller vessel, and both erupted into flames before crashing into the mountains. In his command center, General Muth stared in disbelief at his monitors. What just happened? Trues's gray skin paled further. "Sir, 2 ships down in the Denver sector, and we're detecting a strange signal originating from the city center. Jam it immediately." "We're trying, sir, but the signal keeps changing. It's like it's deliberately avoiding our countermeasures." This was impossible. The humans had lost their military capabilities in the first week. Their remaining technology was primitive compared to Grakdel standards. Yet somehow, they were causing chaos in the perfectly ordered invasion. Sarah knew the alien jamming attempts would come quickly. That's why she had built in the variable frequency modulator, an idea she'd gotten from watching bats use different sound patterns to avoid interference. The device automatically shifted its broadcast pattern every few seconds, following a seemingly random sequence that was actually based on prime numbers. "They're trying to find us," she told the others as the basement lights flickered, "but they won't be able to trace this signal easily." "How long will it work?" Damon asked. "Until they figure out the pattern or until our power reserves die," Sarah admitted. "Maybe a few hours if we're lucky." Above them, more Grakdel ships began to malfunction. Some lost their stabilizers, and tilted awkwardly in the sky. Others had weapon systems that fired unexpectedly, or not at all. Communication between vessels deteriorated into garbled nonsense. General Muth pounded his control panel in frustration. How is this possible? They're using technology centuries behind ours. That's just it, sir, Trues replied hesitantly. They're not using advanced technology. They're using, well, junk. Our systems are designed to defend against sophisticated attacks, not this primitive hodgepodge of signals. By the 4th hour, 23 Grackdale ships had crashed or been disabled. The carefully choreographed invasion had descended into chaos. Sarah's device had not only disrupted navigation and weapon systems, but had somehow triggered a cascade failure in the alien central communication network. The basement door suddenly burst open, and everyone jumped. A woman in a torn police uniform stumbled in. "They're retreating," she gasped. "The ships, they're moving away from the city." Sarah couldn't believe it. All of them? Most of them. Some crashed. But the big ones are pulling back. On his command ship, General Muth made the hardest decision of his career. Order a temporary withdrawal to orbit. We need to recalibrate our entire approach. "Sir," Trues protested, "the algorithms say..." "The algorithms didn't predict this," Muth snapped, all 6 of his eyes blinking rapidly in stress. "One human with scavenged parts has done more damage than the entire Earth defense fleet. We need to understand what we're facing." As the Grackdale ships retreated, word of Denver's resistance spread like wildfire. Sarah's jerry-rigged device became the template for a global response. Within days, similar transmitters appeared in cities worldwide, each with their own unpredictable variations. The Grackdale, masters of 17 worlds, found themselves paralyzed by indecision. Their prediction models failed repeatedly, as humans employed increasingly bizarre and creative solutions. Someone in Tokyo reprogrammed dancing toys to emit interfering signals. A teenager in Brazil used old television antennas to create a reflective mesh that confused Grackdale sensors. A group in Egypt used ancient tunnel systems to move undetected beneath Grackdale monitoring. 2 weeks after Sarah's first broadcast, General Muth called an emergency council meeting on his ship. "They shouldn't be able to resist us," he said, reviewing the data again. "Their technology is inferior. Their weapons are weaker. Their numbers are smaller. Yet they continue to defy our predictions." "It's their unpredictability," said Falks, the fleet's chief psychologist. "Humans don't follow logical patterns when threatened. They become more creative, more willing to try absurd solutions. They embrace chaos in a way we cannot comprehend." "Then how do we defeat them?" Muth demanded. Falkes's expression was grim. "I'm not certain we can, at least not with our current approach. Every time we adapt to one of their improvisations, they create 10 more we haven't seen before." In the museum basement, now transformed into a resistance headquarters, Sarah reviewed messages from other makeshift communication centers around the world. People were fighting back in ways no one could have imagined before the invasion. The aliens' precise, logical approach was proving to be their greatest weakness against human unpredictability. "They're calling for a global meeting," Sarah told her expanded team. "Representatives from the aliens want to talk." 3 days later, Sarah found herself sitting across from General Muth himself in a neutral location, the partially damaged United Nations building in New York. The 6-eyed alien regarded her with what seemed like a mixture of frustration and reluctant respect. "You have done what 17 other worlds could not," Muth said directly. "You have forced the Grackdale Empire to reconsider its approach." Sarah, exhausted but determined, met his gaze. "We're not special, we're just stubborn. And when backed into a corner, humans get creative." "Creative?" Muth repeated the word as though it tasted strange. "Our entire military doctrine is based on predictability and pattern recognition. We simply cannot calculate your species' responses. That's because we sometimes don't know what we're going to do ourselves until we do it," Sarah replied with a small smile. As the formal negotiations began, Sarah knew Earth was still in danger. The Grackdale hadn't given up, they had simply realized they needed a completely new approach. But that pause, that moment of alien confusion, had given humanity the chance it needed. Later, as she walked out of the building, Sarah looked up at the alien ships still hovering uncertainly in the sky. They had come expecting an easy victory against a technologically inferior species. Instead, they had encountered the one thing their advanced algorithms couldn't process: the beautiful, terrible unpredictability of human desperation. The Grakdal had planned for everything except human insanity, and that oversight had become humanity's greatest strength.